Let's go back to history a little bit. We have seen struggle for freedom. People were extremely creative, and various parts and various sections of society, various groups of people joined this movement gradually, and it became bigger and bigger and bigger till we got independence. And all resistance movements have the other. You had British Raj, and British Raj was the other. And therefore, one could unite the entire subcontinent population to rise gradually against this British Raj. Every agitation, every resistance also have to look inwardly to find out where are the holes, where are the problems, and therefore resistance movement was also, the freedom movement was also a reformist movement in its nature, that it looked inwardly on the problems that Indian society was facing at that time. So all resistance movement have these two components. They look at their own weaknesses, keep on changing strategies, inventing new methods of resistance against those forces which are divisive within. And the other part of the resistance movement is the oppressive forces, those who are in power, and those who are working against the people. When India got freedom, we know that even the capitalists of the country who were in nascent stage had taken and participated against the British Raj. The working class, the common people, the Kisan of the country, the students, the teachers, the scientists, all sections of society had participated in the freedom movement, including those who became bourgeoisie later on. So there were these values ingrained in individuals, though they were capitalists, though they were oppressive by nature, and they thrived on the toil uh, and the labor of the working class and made surplus value by exploiting working class. Since they had participated in the freedom movement along with the leadership, therefore they had a different outlook of looking at what India should be and how it should be built. But there were forces in the country which survived during the freedom movement. Independent India, now we know that it was divided. So there was this Hindu communalist and fascistic force and Muslim communalist and fascistic force. Most of the Muslims who were fascistic in nature left the country after the division. And they trampled upon rights of the people right from the beginning in Pakistan. And we know what trajectory Pakistan's history has taken place during this 70 years. The Hindu fundamentalist in India, which was right from the beginning a fascist force, and in so many words, they had written their books praising Hitler, uh, saying that the minorities should not have any right to live as equal citizens in the country, etc., etc. You can read Golwalkar, you can read Savarkar, you can follow Punje and others, many of them, including Hindu Mahasabha and later RSS. They were kept at bay by the Indian masses. Their dream was rejected just after India got freedom. The Muslim fundamentalist could implement its dream in Pakistan, and we know what happened, right? It is only the left and the communist movement which continued the legacy of resistance now. I'm trying to make a case that whenever there was an attack by the capitalist ruling classes, represented by Congress and many other parties, whenever they tried to trample upon the agreed upon values of freedom movement, it was the communist movement, it was the left force which resisted against it. Whenever there was an attack on working class, it was the left. Whenever there was an attack on students, it was the left. Whenever peasantry was trampled upon, it was the left. Whenever the youth was not given jobs, it was the left which came forward and resisted. The idea of a unified India, whenever that was threatened, whenever the center tried to usurp powers of the state, it was the communists and the left forces which resisted. So we have got a whole continued history of resistance, not starting when India got freedom, that is what 1947, but a much longer history of resistance during the freedom movement and after that. What happened was that once this generation of people, those who had participated in the freedom movement, was over, when they were no more there, then the character of all other bourgeois parties started changing. It was only the communist and the left who held the ground. So the resistance movement was basically the domain of the left. They tried to take help from other parties, regional parties. They also tried to appeal to the elements within these bourgeois parties who were democratic in nature to safeguard the democracy in the country. Gradually, when in other parties, especially Congress, the freedom values of freedom movement got weakened, then in all parties, the corruption was rampant. The worry for a united India, and India can survive only when the diversity of the country is respected. This idea got almost trampled upon. Those who believe that it is iron hand and one leader who could be fascist should control the country, this idea gradually got germinated and spread all over the country. And the most reactionary elements represented by RSS and BJP, and I don't distinguish between RSS and BJP and Bajrang Dal and Durga Vahini, I consider all of them as RSS. So RSS could get the opportunity in this atmosphere where the values of freedom movement were getting weakened and people started losing confidence in the structure of democracy. It is here they filled in the gap and projected the most rabid, cynical, leadership to come to power. Now, one more point I would like to make here, that they had promised to do what they are doing. For 90 years, they had dreamt of grabbing the power to do what they are doing today. They are not ashamed of it. It was their agenda. It is we who failed somewhere to convince the larger masses. Now, in my opinion, when BJP came to power in 2014, there was a major shift that happened as compared to all earlier governments. The major shift was that all other parties somewhere had confidence in the structure of democracy and had confidence in the constitution and values of constitution. And when they swear by constitution and became ministers and chief ministers and prime minister and president and whatever, they had somewhere this confidence that this is the book which we should abide by. Even the corrupt of the corrupt believed in constitution. Now here is a force which for 90 years did not believe in confidence in this constitution, comes to power. And why I am saying 90 years? Because they had a different dream even at the time when these formations were taking shape. The other section of society, the other section of leadership was moving towards the constitution. But they were moving in some other direction. They were what they call Hindutva, which is a political category. They were moving towards Akhand Bharat, Hindu Bharat, etc., etc. So they never had this conception of constitution, where others were moving towards making one of the best constitution of the world, which was secular, which respected human beings, which respected diversity, which respected people's freedom to think and question. This was the section which never believed in the constitution. Now, in this scenario, there is this force which does not believe in constitution, comes to power, swearing by constitution. Right? The irony is that if you have to become a minister, and if you have to become prime minister, and if you have to be part of the cabinet, then you have to swear by constitution, in which you do not believe. In this situation, when there is this upcoming, as we call them these days, crony capitalists, they do not believe in values of freedom movement, they do not believe in constitution, and here is political power and political elite of today, which does not believe in that. They are likely to implement the agenda which they have sweared by for 90 years, which is exactly what they are doing. After 2014, they are going ahead very fast on what they had promised. So you cannot complain that they are doing this and they are doing that and why are they doing this, etc., etc. That is out of question. And most of the bourgeois parties are completely confused about what is happening to the country. It is only the left which has some understanding of this shift that has come about. And clubbed with this understanding and legacy of resistance I have a lot of hope in the left that they will be able to probably resist. But look at the recent developments that have happened. When they came to power, the first attack was on the intellectuals. They started calling people, when the resistance started, they started calling intellectuals as award wapsi gang. The violence they perpetrated to create an atmosphere of fear in the country was going on at one level. When people started asking questions and the intellectuals started asking questions, then the first attack came on these intellectuals and they called them as award wapsi gang. Then the second attack also came on intellectuals when they coined the phrase urban Naxal. Simultaneously, they started also attacking the students. So universities came under attack. We know that the problem started with Hyderabad University, it shifted to JNU, then it shifted to Jamia, then it shifted to Aligarh, etc., Jadavpur University, and then Delhi University. Don't forget that there was a resistance movement in Delhi University, and ABVP, which is student wing of RSS, attacked those students. We should keep on reminding ourselves that ABVP acted as goons in Delhi University. So the students were attacked because they could think, they could question. The left forces tried to resist and also tried to bring on platform different kinds of resistance movements. We have not really succeeded, but we have moved forward. The left stood by the intellectuals, the left stood by the minorities who were under intense attack, the left also stood by the intellectuals, the students, intellectuals, and in the meantime, their other agenda was going on. So it was three-pronged agenda. Crush the resistance movement wherever it is, create atmosphere of fear all across the country, and the third was that implement the crony agenda of crony capitalists. So the welfare state, idea of welfare state was completely trampled upon. Most of the middle class was very convinced in India that there is this Messiah who has come. And this Messiah is going to improve our economy and our condition. The middle class was the last one to come to resistance, to join the resistance. While implementing the agenda of the crony capitalist, they not only opened up the market, sold the property, people's property, rampantly, which Congress was also doing. But there is this shift that it was done now without any discussion and with complete shamelessness. There was no shame involved in selling these uh, uh, people's property. All the democratic structures were initially weakened and then completely demolished. This is the background in which you see the bills being passed, law being made against the working class in the country. Working class was losing jobs even before Corona in large numbers because government and Nadda, I have read his statement. I don't know whether it's correct or not, but it's the most dangerous comment that a political leader could give. गवर्नमेंट ने रोजगार देने का ठेका नहीं लिया है। गवर्नमेंट के पास और कोई ठेका ही नहीं होना चाहिए सिवाय रोजगार देने के। गवर्नमेंट का सारा ठेका रोजगार देने का होना चाहिए, चाहे वो प्राइवेट सेक्टर हो, चाहे वो गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर हो। एंड हियर इज प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ द रूलिंग पार्टी who says that government is not responsible for giving job to the people. Then Prime Minister says pakoda banana is a job. So with complete shamelessness, they have said that idea of welfare state doesn't exist. It is not on the agenda. When this is happening, Corona hits us and it provides an opportunity to consolidate their fascistic agenda. I think if Corona had not happened, they would have delayed the attack probably on peasants of the country, on the farmers. This bill, which was not discussed, even in the parliament, leave alone discussing it with organizations of farmers. Even in the parliament, they didn't want to discuss the bill, and they passed this bill. Now, in my opinion, the farmers in the country, and I have great hope with farmers because some of the biggest agitations in the last 2-3 years we have seen were organized by farmers in the country. We remember the beautiful long march in Maharashtra. We remember a massive protest in Delhi. But we also should remember that during the CEA agitation, there was a new type of resistance movement which India had never seen emerged. Left has a long legacy of creative movements, resistance movements in the country. But we need to learn from each resistance movement that takes place anywhere in any corner of the country. I personally do not think and cannot remember any agitation in the country, any resistance movement in the country which was so creative in nature as we saw during CEA agitation. It was sustained for such a long time because of 2-3 reasons. One was that it was continuously evolving and it was highly creative. Two was that even freedom movement had not seen such large participation of women in any resistance movement. The young, the students, the old ones, the middle-aged women, all of them were on the streets. So participation of women changed the entire character of this movement itself. I have not seen any movement, any resistance movement, which was so non-violent. And it continuously kept on reminding itself that we stand by non-violence. I have never seen any movement which at such large level, where preamble of the Constitution was ever read in India, I have not seen participation of young artists, singers, musicians, writers, poets in any edition at such a large level. And these were young ones who came out on the streets. These are the factors which ultimately were responsible for sustaining it for such a long time. Had there not been Corona, probably it would have sustained itself for a longer period of time. I know that every resistance movement should have an exit blueprint. And I was very vocal in saying that this movement's biggest weakness is that there is no exit plan. How are they going to conclude? Probably it would have evolved over a period of time. The conclusion would have evolved over a period of time. But Delhi riots and then Corona somehow suddenly stopped the movement. In my opinion, the farmers' movement must learn from it. I'm very conscious of the fact that in this particular movement, RSS tried to make it movement of only Muslims. And so was the case with Muslim fundamentalists. They also tried. But remember that Muslim fundamentalist organizations who participated in it had to swear by constitution, values of constitution. They had to invite the most progressive section of intellectuals to speak in these agitations. They had to put up big uh, uh, photographs of Gandhi, Nehru, Bhagat Singh, Azad, all kinds of freedom movement leaders. I do not know any place where Muslim fundamentalists could raise slogans which were religious in nature. And whenever somebody tried that out, there were efforts made at places, then the public rejected them. Those who were participating rejected them. My submission is, going back to what you asked in the beginning, I have taken a much longer route to explain it, is my submission is very simple. That now we should learn from the resistance movement that we have seen during the last 2 years. Students' movement, farmers' earlier movement, and the CEA movement. And if we have to sustain, then we should also recognize that among farmers, the women are going to be the worst hit, which normally we do not recognize. This particular movement, CEA movement, has brought that question to surface. Women recognize that they are going to be hit most badly when CEA is implemented, when NRC is implemented. It is our responsibility now to invoke this consciousness among women who are survive on the production of farmers and the families. Women are going to be most badly affected, and therefore we must make them part of the agitation. As I am watching the footage that is being circulated, the media obviously has been completely subjugated. So on television, etc., those images are not appearing. But otherwise, what we are watching is that it is still male-dominated agitation. If it has to sustain, then women should be part of this agitation. Secondly, the intellectual section.
I think they should lead.
They should lead. I believe they should lead. But they should be part of the agitation, either as leaders or equal partners in the agitation. Secondly, whatever creative energy was unleashed, and we saw that was unleashed during CEA agitation, should be again channelized to stand by the farmers' community of farmers. Without that, it will be very difficult to sustain. And therefore, the best of the mind should be involved so that they stand by the farmers of the country. And the third thing is that the whole idea of attack on farmers should be related to the attack on constitution. The CEA agitation could be sustained because people were convinced that it was not an attack only on a community, it was not an attack only on citizenship of individuals, but it was an attack on the constitution itself. And therefore, I consider that unless and until the left, and it is only the left which has capability to do it, they relate this attack on farmers through this bill, they relate it to the larger attack on Constitution of India. It will be very difficult to sustain it for a long time. I'm sure as of now we are thinking in terms of Bharat Bandh, which is an old form of resistance, and I think that it is genuine form of resistance. It is a good form of resistance, but in order to sustain this agitation, we have to think very, very creatively. Learn from these agitations and give it a shape which is a more sustained and permanent fight. It is not going to be solved in a day. See, in my opinion, it is only the left that understands the gravity of the situation, that fascist forces are not going to listen. Therefore, this agitation, this resistance movement, which is emerging in Punjab and in Haryana and in Western UP, which is really very intensely affected, the movement, the resistance movement has to sustain. And if we learn from the CA movement, then the attack on farming community through this bill has to be related to attack on constitution. The structure of constitution, the secular values of the country, it is a much bigger attack. It is not only attack on farmers' community. And if you look at the whole sequence of event, you know that even the debate was blocked. And therefore, it is an attack on constitution. In this agitation, as I understand, unless and until the intellectuals, the artists, the writers, poets, musicians, unless they are involved, it will be difficult to sustain. If women are not involved as equal partners, because they are going to be hit extremely badly, and we should recognize that. And as I've been saying, that once we look at these images which are coming, it is primarily at the moment male-dominated agitation. Unless women start leading it, it will be very difficult to sustain it. And it is a long haul, I know for sure, and nobody is in any illusion in the country that even after 25th, and I know that it's going to be a successful Bandh in the country, even after successful Bandh, this government is not going to concede. This government is not going to change its stance. And the media will keep on misleading people. So these things are not going to change. It's a long haul, And therefore, a sustained movement is necessary. And we should learn from the resistance movement in the past, how to sustain it. And I know the CEA movement is a good blueprint.
Actually, I just want to share one of my experience during CAA protest. I was there in Malappuram. I was covering a protest march, and one of my friend was speaking. When there was a huge procession came, about 5,000 Muslims, majority of them are Muslims. Actually, it was coordinated by the local Muslim groups. So when the whole people reached there at the venue, suddenly some young guys started making voice like Allahu Akbar. Okay. So to my surprise, a mullah who was in charge of that procession, he was so angry. He said, "Shut up." He said, "Go to the mosque. Wahan jaake naare lagao. Not the place
Absolutely.
here."
This didn't happen only in Malappuram. I've been to many agitation sites, including Aligarh, Allahabad, Hyderabad, and Delhi. Everywhere, this was the reaction of ordinary Muslim. Those Muslims who were with skull cap and beard. Whenever somebody tried to raise Allahu Akbar or Nare Takbir, they were stopped by Muslims. And also remember that it was easier to organize them because the central government did not permit at other places. They wanted to change the narrative that it's a Muslim agitation.
Yeah.
So they allowed Muslims to gather and they tried their level best to stop any agitation in those areas where Hindus were in majority. But can you imagine that 150,000 people gathering in Bombay? They were not all Muslims. Majority of them were Hindus. At Shaheen Bagh, on every Saturday, there were people from 20,000 to a lakh. And all kinds of people participated. It was such a creative movement that people participated, and RSS agenda was to push it to Muslim areas and change the narrative. And today, they are blaming those who participated, both Hindus and Muslims who participated, mainly Hindus are uh, under attack these days, who participated in the protest. They are trying to change the narrative. They are saying that there were some Hindus, these are urban Naxals, who were masterminding the whole thing, etc., etc. So the attack today is all out. It is not only on minorities. Anybody who is against the government, anybody who can raise his voice against CEA NRC is today under attack. Same may happen when you stand up for the rights of the peasantry or the farmers of the country. But if you have to sustain the agitation, then you have to involve other sections of society and make it a bigger, uh, uh, much bigger attack. Because the attack from the other side is much bigger. It is the constitution which is being attacked today in the name of farmers or workers. Without changing the laws, this wouldn't have happened.
Many people will not be able to come to street to protest or to make part in the resistance movement. But a lot of people are there who are sympathetic towards farmers' plight and they are against government policy. So how can those people can be make part of this movement? One thing I think is boycott of these corporate products or these shops where agriculture related products are sold by the so-called corporates. If the resistance movement can announce such a thing that everyone can, so without going to the street and fight for the farmers, even a person sitting on the home, by not purchasing the products of these multinational Indian corporates, I think they can also express, and it will hit the corporates very hard.
It will definitely if we are able to do that. But in my opinion, the conditions yet are not ripe for giving those kind of calls. In certain areas, yes, the boycott can be executed, it can be organized, but at national level, the middle class is not yet ready. In my opinion, organizing protests in a small groups at very many places would be a much better idea, in which those who are sympathetic can come and participate, at least by standing there and listening to a song maybe, or uh, reading the preamble, or looking at the painting in support of farmers. Maybe one could give a call to at least write on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. These are the things which are going to appeal to the younger generation and new generation, which would like to stand by the farmers of the country. Outrightly giving call to boycott things may create at the moment only confusion and cannot be implemented, in my opinion. Today's present conditions are not ripe for that. Gandhi, when gave that call, it had a history of agitations before that. We should move towards that. Hit the corporate where it hurts most. But today, if you want people to organize, if you want people to participate, then you have to think of creative methods. Maybe somebody will sing a song. Maybe just a post on Twitter. That would be a participation.